So we turn to Ian Dunt today once again because Liam Fox, just a couple of days ago, released something, or released a statement in the House of Commons, something that was very, very obvious and completely about this whole Brexit lie. And once again, I have to say, Ian Dunt is one of those people who's consistently written about Brexit in a good and factual way that very few other journalists out there have written about. And I always say, if you want to go and look for someone who's good, doing good writing about Brexit, then you've got Ian Dunt on politics.co.uk. He's very good. In fact, politics.co.uk in general does do some very good reporting on Brexit, and the Financial Times. Those have been the only places that have been reporting the stories that often don't get brought up to the forefront. And this is one such story. So we begin. So Liam Fox released a very interesting written statement yesterday. His department has started to do the preliminary work at the World Trade Organization, the WTO, required for when Britain leaves the EU. Members of the WTO have this thing called schedules. These are basically a description of your trading relationship with the world. Now, those of you who know about Brexit and have been following this, especially looking into the claims that Brexiteers make about the WTO, these schedules are of utmost importance. Because if no one accepts your schedules, no one will trade with you. And as of yet, no one has accepted these schedules that we have submitted. In fact, Australia, New Zealand, and I think Brazil have already lodged complaints. So, anyway, it continues. They list things like your tariffs and your service commitments. Britons are currently held under an EU umbrella, and they need to be extracted ahead of leaving. This should be the chance to create that confident, independent, global trading nation Fox and other Brexiteers are always talking about. Finally, Britain can construct a trading agreement that suits it, not the continent. For instance, we can get rid of that special rule on oranges, which we don't grow but have to labour under because of Mediterranean states in the EU, which do. We can prioritise the sugar cane that Tate and Lye use in their sugar, rather than the sugar beet which is used in Europe. We can finally create a custom trading agreement for this country, rather than one for a continent which sometimes share very few economic interests. This is exactly what Brexit was all about. Except Fox isn't going to do any of that. So this is part of the statement they released. In order to minimise disruption to global trade as well as leave the EU, over the coming period the government will prepare the necessary draft schedules which replace as far as possible our current obligations. I just want to read that out again to you because this is important. Which replace as far as possible our current obligations. So anyway, it continues. It is a startling admission that the UK's extracted WTO schedules will replicate as far as possible its current status. So we'll keep the special rule for oranges even though we don't grow them. We'll continue to protect a sugar process designed for Europe and continue failing to protect one used by one of our own major companies, despite its years of lobbying to change the system. In short, despite all the sound and fury, despite all the attacks against immigrants and the threats against EU citizens in the UK, despite all the Brexit votes and the Richmond rebellions and the sudden change in the country's political dynamic, the government is not aiming to change anything of any substance. Britain will keep the exact EU tariff system which Brexiteers for so long have said was strangling it. Why? Because to do otherwise would be suicide. The WTO has been presented as by Brexiteers as a safety net, a place to go if a no deal is possible with the EU. They keep on saying that they have no concern about falling back on their rules. That is because they don't know what they are. Any member state at the WTO can trigger a trade dispute with the UK if they feel that they have been unfairly treated by a change in its arrangements. And Britain is about to change its arrangements with everyone. It is a major economy extracting itself from a massive trading bloc. Those disputes are likely to either be resolved by sanctions or concessions on tariffs. If Britain were to lose several of them, it would basically be trading under the conditions of an injured foreign parties. So instead, Britain will try to rock the boat as little as possible. It will copy and paste all the EU tariffs, whether it suits us or not. It will protect produce it has no intention of marketing and leave many it does without protections. Then it will have to figure out what to do with tariff rate quotas, which can't be replaced like tariffs are. Quotas mean that importers pay one tariff for a set amount of product, say 100,000 tons of chicken, and then another tariff for anything above that amount. This is calculated across the EU. So when Britain takes its tariff quota out, it is calculating what slice of the pie it is entitled to. You can't replicate quotas. You have to calculate them. Tariff rate quotas are devilishly complicated and they are almost never touched. The EU still operates under quotas from 2 expansions ago, but Britain is pressed for time, so it will probably take the last 3 years of trade flow and claim that it is the basis for them going forward. This is as close to tolerable situation as the UK is likely to find, but look at the incentives on the other side. Brazil exports 480,000 tons of chicken to the EU a year, of which about 40,000 goes to Britain. Let's say the British deal on this tariff quotas is unfair. They will trigger a trade dispute. That's fine. That's to be expected. But now imagine the British deal is perfectly fair. What is their incentive? They have the opportunity to open up further market access for their poultry exporters, so they may wish to trigger a trade dispute anyway. Britain will be walking a tightrope, hoping thousands of these disputes don't erupt at a uniquely vulnerable time for its economy. That makes opening to making the challenges the other side demands. This is not just the case for Brazil, but every single country on earth which exports to the UK. Failure at the WTO level could trigger a global avalanche of trade disputes against us, just as we cut ourselves off from our largest market. And all of this doesn't even include the EU, which is an independent actor at the WTO, as well as the representative body of 27 of its other member states. They get to present their schedules to the WTO first because they are much larger. If they disagree with anything we've done, they have a stronger voice in winning that battle. Britain's extracted schedules will need to be accepted by the EU for it to have any hope of making a seamless transition. None of this will be mentioned by the Brexiteers, of course. In public, they puff out their chests and accuse critics of not believing in Britain and thumb their noses at their European counterparts. But in private, we'll always be praying. But in private, well away from prying eyes, they delicately and loyally replicate all the EU's trading arrangements just so that they stand a chance of setting themselves up in a viable manner at the WTO. And that's where we are now, and that is a very real possibility. And as we said, we've already got 3 countries looking at starting a trade dispute with us: Australia, New Zealand and Brazil. And that's not to mention any of the other possibilities that could come of this. And he's completely right in his assessment of this. We will be going out at a very vulnerable time, and it will be in other countries' interests to go, yeah, we're going to start a trade dispute because we see an opportunity to open up more markets. Not for Britain's benefit, but for that other country's benefit. The WTO is not this land of milk and honey Brexiteers have made it out to be. It is a shark tank where any of these countries will fight and squabble for any advantage they can. In the EU, we were part of a big bloc of 27 countries that had a very powerful voice. We are no longer part of that bloc. This imagination that somehow Britain still has this incredibly powerful voice is complete fantasy. We don't. We have only had this voice because we were members of the European Union. We were known as one of the big three. One of the big three countries that had a lot of sway in the European Union. And now that's gone. And that's not to say what changes could be made in Europe. We no longer have a seat at that table. Remember, Europe is our biggest trading partner. We do more trade with the European 27 countries than we do with any other country in this world. Sorry, this world. I mean the world. They are our most important trading partner, and now we have decided to up and move away from them. And that is, as Ian Dunt puts it here, it is the Brexit lie. Nothing is going to change because they don't want it to change. Leaving the EU is a stupid decision that is not based on any rationale or any actual real ideas. It's all based on ideology.